Hey, good evening. Well, good evening for those of us in Australia. Good morning to the US. Good afternoon to Europe and Asia and the Middle East. And yeah, I guess good whatever it is, wherever you are. Yeah, hope you're all having a good day. Cool. So this is a bit of I guess, a continuing series. So a couple of weeks ago, I did an Ask an Atheist Conservative, like a bit of an AMA, and it was really quite interesting. And since then, a heap of people have sort of gotten in touch and had questions to ask and wanted to have conversations about things. I've actually had some really productive conversations. There's certainly been some conversations that have made me, I guess, think about a couple of my points of view, and maybe I've done the same. I think when people can have conversations, it's only ever a good thing, even if at the end of the day everyone walks away disagreeing. I think at least being able to understand where the other side's coming from is good fun. So today I'm joined by a good mate of mine and also my producer. So he's getting to sit on this side of the aisle today, but I guess we'll be co-producing and doing things. Ausman cometh. Ausman, how are you, buddy?
Guten Morgen. I am all right. A little bit nervous since I'm usually never up at the front line.
Guten Morgen. So wait, so why are you saying good morning? You're on US time, aren't you?
Yeah. Actually, not so much anymore because of new tablets, and they're having fun with me right now.
Well, that's all right. Well, you see, the good thing about this is just to balance it out. I know you've got your tablets, so I've actually got I've got a nice, having a nice glass of an Australian rosé. So it's a Cupio. So it's so far so good. I've only had a few sips out of the glass, but give me a little bit, and I'll have caught up to you and your tablets. So now the reason that we're doing this is because Aussie wanted to quiz me on a few things. Oz isn't really someone who's overly political. And I guess, it's probably like most people, his politics are, well, I think it's fair to say that Twitter and the news is probably where you get most of your politics. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's actually pretty fair. Twitter is the majority of where I get my politics. So the majority of my politics is usually US politics. And I'm a left. According to the US, I am a left liberal minarchist. So I'm into minarchism.
Right. Okay. That's not a usual combination, but that's all right. Let's talk. So, I guess what questions would you have for me? I guess what would you want to? What pressing things would you want to know from me?
Well, to begin with, I don't know much, if anything, about the Australian political system. So rather than get a full history of what the political system is all about, I want to know the current scape of the political system as it stands today, rather than 5 years or 100 years from the past.
All right. So first thing I'm going to say, and I'll do the disclaimer out there because I think you're aware of this. I am a member of the Liberal Party, so I do have bias towards that, so I'm just going to flag that straight up. But I'm going to do this as objectively as I can. I'm not actively campaigning on behalf of the party here. When there's election, I'll probably be handing out some how to votes for someone. Maybe even myself. You never know. But yeah, so I will be as objective as I can. So look, I guess that the current, when you say the current state, as in how it works, or
well, yes. I'm not going to say my real name, and I hope no one says my real name in the chat. But
it's Ausman cometh. I know it's Ausman cometh.
Well, yeah. I've never voted ever in my life so far, and I'm 32.
Yep.
So I don't know anything about the political sphere. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So just basically,
well, we can talk through it
right now.
Hopefully, I don't convince you to vote for the other team, but we'll see. Now, just to clarify something that's in the something that is in the chat there. Granny's asked. She said, "I thought I was with the Conservative Party. The Liberal Party in Australia is the Conservative or the right-leaning party. So we're a two-party system. We do have more than two parties, but similar to the US, you've got two parties that seem to dominate everything, and then a few smaller parties underneath. So we've got what's called the coalition, which is the Liberal Party and the National Party. The National Party, the country version. The Liberal Party, I guess, the more city and urban version. But they are the right-leaning parties, and our left-leaning party is called the Labor Party. Then we've got parties like the Greens, One Nation, who are sort of minor parties on the left and right fringes. So, but most of our parties are fairly centrist. So, okay. So look, as far as how everything works, so the basics of it is we've got an upper house and a lower house. So the House of Representatives, for those who are in the US, it's like Congress. It's evenly divided out, or meant to be evenly divided out, roughly about 100,000 people per seat for a round number. There's 150 seats in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, we've got 76 seats, which the Senate is evenly distributed. So it's 12 senators per state, plus 2 in the Northern Territory and 2 in the ACT. So that's the basics of how the Australian political system works. So that the Prime Minister comes from the House of Representatives. So whichever party has the most seats in the House of Representatives, so that's the equivalent of Congress. So it'd be like the leader of Congress. So I guess Nancy Pelosi for those in the US. It's whoever is, well, whichever party has the most is the party in government, and they elect the leader from that party. So yeah, the Liberal National Coalition at the moment is has the most seats. So from that, Scott Morrison, who's the leader of the Liberal Party, is the Prime Minister. And in the Senate, it's because it's 12 senators per state. Every 3 years, 6 of them go up for re-election. So if you get into the Senate, you've got generally a 6-year term. And because it dwindles down, normally what you'll get in most states is 2 Liberal, at least 2 Liberal National, 2 Labor, normally another one of a Liberal or a Labor. And then you'll get like a Green or a One Nation or other independents. There can be a few funny mixes in there. That's where you get like Pauline Hanson. She's in the Senate, so she's a senator for One Nation in Queensland.
And just to cheekily answer GOD's question, Pauline Hanson is why I don't vote. Nah, just kidding. She's not the main reason why. I'm just kidding.
That's fair. Marcus Aurelius has put something in, a first-past-the-post system. We actually don't have first-past-the-post here in Australia. We've actually got what's called preferential voting. So what will happen is, say there's 4 candidates, you number them in your preference. So 1 for who you want elected, 2 for your second, 3 for your third, 4 for your fourth. When, say, candidate number 4 is eliminated, so all the people who voted number 1 for them, whatever their number 2 votes gets redistributed that way. So it's a really good system. It's different to what's the UK is a first past the post. I believe the US is a first past the post, but we're preferential, which does occasionally give us like a Green or an independent who'll get in, but it's still pretty rare.
Exactly. And just to touch on another subject that you spoke about earlier, about how the Australian politics is a 2-party system for the majority. Didn't there used to be a 3-party majority, but 2 of them joined team to include 1 party? Like ALP or something like that?
Okay, well, there's been a lot of splits over the years. So the initial split happened after the First World War, when you had a bit of a split. Billy Hughes, who was he was the Labor Prime Minister, he split away, and he actually formed the United Australia Party, which is the one that Clive Palmer's now running around claiming. So he formed that, but then out of that kind of dwindled away, and then ended up becoming the Liberal Party. So that was how the Liberal Party was formed, sort of out off the back of that in 1957, I believe. And then sort of from that, it's sort of been, you've had the Liberal Labor. The National Party, that was the old Country Party. So that's just like a country version of what we've got, of the Liberal Party. They've always been in a coalition or an alliance. There was the Labor Party did have a split with the Democratic Labor Party splitting away, which was like an ultra-conservative religious Catholic party. They're now considered very right-wing. And they used to joke that Tony Abbott was the first ever DLP Prime Minister that the country had, because his views were very similar to the Democratic Labor Party. But they're pretty much a done thing now. So, but no, there's alliances. And look, if you don't have enough seats, like, there's 150 seats in Parliament, you need 76 to form government. A few years ago, we had a situation where the Labor Party had 71, I believe, and the Liberal Party had 72. And there was all these independents and things sitting in the middle with their little bit of power. So, and that's how Julia Gillard got elected over Tony Abbott.
Which I appreciate. I'd rather Julia Gillard over Abbott.
Yeah, see, the problem there was it didn't matter who won. You had this handful of independents who held the balance of power. So Liberals always going to vote with Liberal, Labor's always going to vote with Labor. So they basically, to get anything done, you had to go to this little group of independents to get anything passed in Parliament. And that's why Julia Gillard, even though she said before the election there'll be no carbon tax, why she was forced to, because that was the deal that she signed with the independents and the Greens to introduce a carbon tax. So it wasn't a good government there,
No.
and I don't think that was Julia Gillard's fault. I think that was the situation's fault, because she basically had to negotiate with independents who were actually from Conservative seats, but then went with the left-wing party because they offered them the better deal, which, and none of them got re-elected. They all got kicked out, and every time they've tried to run since, they've been absolutely decimated. But so we've got Grumpy Old Dude has asked if there are term limits for politicians in Australia. So it's 3 years. You're elected for 3 years. You can be re-elected. You can be re-elected forever. The Prime Minister can be Prime Minister for life if you keep getting re-elected, or if your party keeps getting re-elected and your party decides to keep you. One thing that we do have that's interesting is because you actually elect the party, not the person. It's not a presidential system, even though the party's got a leader that you are voting for essentially to be Prime Minister. If the party decides they don't want that person to be leader of the party anymore, well, that person then loses the role of Prime Minister. And sorry, there's only one other layer in that, and that's the Governor General, who is the representative of the Queen. Kind of acts like a president almost. Technically, the Governor General is our head of state. The Queen's our head of state, and the Governor General is her representative. So the Governor General is appointed by the Prime Minister. The Governor General can be sacked by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister can be sacked by the Governor General, ironically. So the Governor General is just someone who is appointed. That's David Hurley, I believe, at the moment. But really, it's just a ceremonial role. Technically, something will go through the lower house. So if law goes through the lower house, gets voted on, it passes, goes to the Senate, voted on, passes, and then the Governor General signs it off. So until the Governor General signs it off, it's not law, but the Governor General is not going to knock back any law, because the Governor General is basically a ceremonial role representing the Queen, who is meant to be apolitical. So she'll just sign anything, technically.
That's just messed up.
Yeah, that's why we need a republic. That's why I am a staunch supporter of having an Australian republic, because I think we should have an elected Australian president. And that being said, back in the I think it was 99 or 2000 when we had the republic referendum, I voted no. I said no to a republic back then, but I was also 18 at the time, and knowing now what I know, it's an easy decision to say no. We don't need the Queen. We can do fine without the British royal family.
No, I agree. I fully agree, because there's not much political intervention as far as I'm concerned. But then again, I am very anti-political, and I don't keep up with politics much. Considering
that's why you have me as a friend.
Well, exactly. The last political thing that I kept up with was, I think, was the turn of the century, near 2000, where there was 3 parties that turned into 2 parties. main parties.
Nope, that didn't happen.
I swear it did. Well, there you go.
Oh, no, okay, all right. So, yeah, you're in a certain state. Okay,
Queensland,
okay.
yeah.
So what? Yeah. So in Queensland's different. So you've got the Liberal Party and the National Party, that are separate parties everywhere except for Queensland. In Queensland, you've got the LNP. So the Liberal National Party is a party. So technically, if you're voted in Queensland, if you're elected in Queensland, so say Peter Dutton, okay, he's a Queenslander. He's actually not a member of the Liberal Party. He's also not a member of the National Party. He's a member of the Liberal National Party. So it's a bit of a unique Queensland thing, because in Queensland, what was happening was the Nationals were constantly getting, or the Nationals were actually bigger at one point than the Liberals. And, the Nationals had Joe Bjelke-Petersen, who was the Premier for years in Queensland. So I think eventually they just went, well, there's no point fighting each other. Let's just join forces and become the same one.
Well, yeah. That's the last thing I remember. And that was 20 years ago, I think.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, that's why you got me. Now, incidentally, anyone who's in the chat, throw questions at me, because I know that look, most people who follow me on Twitter, Twitter is predominantly left-wing. I get that. The atheist community on Twitter is absolutely predominantly left-wing. And I know that I'm not the standard normal. And I'm happy to comment on pretty much anything. I'm happy to talk about US politics, British politics. I have studied politics, so I'm not the be all and end all on it. But I can answer any questions. So if people do have questions, please do throw them in. I noticed Atheist Honor said, "Please don't be mean on Queen Lizzie." I actually like the Queen. I really do. I'm pro the British royal family. I just don't think we need the British royal family ruling Australia. I've got no problem with them in England or the United Kingdom there. But no, I think we need to. I think we really need to be our own separate nation and forge our own identity, because we are very different to as similar as we are. We're very different to the United Kingdom.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I know about the Queen, and I know the fact that she can practically do anything that she damn well wants. I have no issues with her. She seems very held back, very relaxed, very calm. I just think
she has
exactly
a ceremonial role. Yeah, she's got a ceremonial role, and that's fine. And look, I know people rag on the British Royals. I actually think they do a lot of good. I think Harry and his wife have really not doing the right thing at the moment. Meghan is commenting on the US election. She shouldn't be doing that. The royal family is always apolitical. They stay out of it, and that's exactly what should happen. So Grumpy Old Dude's actually asked, so is Australia still considered part of the British territories? No. So funnily enough, there was actually a technicality. So Australia the colonies of Australia united to become Australia in 1901. So, it's like the different states. So New South Wales, Queensland, WA, or Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, Tasmania. Plus we had the Australian Capital Territory, which is Canberra, where Canberra is. So Canberra's in between Sydney and Melbourne, because Sydney and Melbourne were the two major cities and still are, and they couldn't decide between them whether the capital would be in Sydney or the capital would be in Melbourne. So they planted a little mini territory right in the middle of where New South Wales and Queensland are, which is where Canberra is now. So Canberra, the capital was moved to Canberra in the 1920s after the city was built. New Zealand was originally meant to be a part of the Commonwealth, the Commonwealth of Australia, but they actually ended up pulling out because they had concerns over how the Indigenous, the Maori people, would be treated under the Australian Constitution, because Australians weren't particularly, great, or weren't particularly. There were some horrific things that happened, especially in the mid 19th century, with the Australian Indigenous population, where up in Queensland they were basically just massacred. It was absolutely disgusting what happened in Queensland to the Indigenous population, and that actually turned New Zealand off. But it also put some interesting clauses in the Australian Constitution expecting New Zealand would come in. But so we joined in 1901. technically, the Australia Act was passed in, I believe, 1986 or 87, which formally made us more of it separated us from Britain, because what essentially happened was, you had all the court systems. You had the High Court of Australia, but then if you weren't successful there, you could actually appeal to the Privy Court in Britain, and Britain still had some jurisdiction over us. So that all got wiped out in the 1980s. So, but no, we're an independent nation. I think we're similar arrangement to Canada, just with less Americans on our border.
Yeah, we're I want to say a matriarchal democracy.
No.
What?
No, matriarchal. Well, I mean, the Queen is
The Queen,
the head of state, but no, a matriarchal society would imply that it's a society that's run by women. I don't think that's the. We're a monarchy. We're a.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
monarchy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're a it's what's called the Westminster system. So it's the same as what they've got in the UK. Just instead of a House of Lords, we have a Senate. So in the UK, they've got this silly system where people inherit a seat essentially in the House of Lords. But in Australia, it's the states have equal representation, which can be a problem because, I mean, you have a state like Tasmania. Tasmania's got, I think, 300,000 people, 350,000 people who live in Tasmania, and they have as many senators as New South Wales. It's got 7.5 million. So there isn't, it's not something we're happy about here in New South Wales. It was definitely a system designed for the late 19th, early 20th century, but it's the system we've got, and it's certainly one of the best systems in the world. It just probably needs a few little tweaks, but yeah. So what else have you got for me? I'm not getting a lot of questions from the audience, so Ozzy, you just keep them coming. What do you want to know?
Right. I want to know exactly the. How am I going to word this? The two things have we got? It's Labour and Liberal, correct? The two major parties.
They're the two major parties, yeah.
Yep. What? You belong to the Liberals, I would say?
Oh, I do, yeah. I'm a member of the Liberal Party, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Very, very proudly so too, I might add.
No worries at all. Exactly what are the Liberals about? Just the Liberals.
Okay, so the Liberals are a bit of a broad church. So the Liberals are the right-leaning party. So when I say the Liberals are a broad church, the Liberal Party encompasses, I guess, a number of different groups within the Liberal Party. So you've got what I call the hardcore conservatives. So the ones that are very much pretty similar to, I guess, the American Republicans. You've got your regular conservatives, probably people like me who are what you'd call an economic conservative. So, I believe in smaller government. So at least a big part of conservative thought is we think that the government should have less to do with your day-to-day life, and there should be less interference from that. We should have a smaller government that basically just administers what it needs to. And we're happy for business to have, a bigger go, for business to be, find themselves taxed less, because the theory is that if business has more money, they can employ more people. Those people will then pay tax. Those people will also spend money, which will create more jobs, which will create more tax. And it's what's called trickle-down economics. It's a controversial thought. It hasn't been proven whether it works or not. It was initially sort of really implemented in the 80s in the US and the UK. I think it looks as though it works, but it's the other side. The other side will say no, and I guess your difference then is with Labor, they're more about bigger government, the government looking after more things for society, and taxing business and taxing people more to pay for that. But then you've also got like the moderate faction, the centre-right faction in the Liberal Party, which hold, views that possibly in somewhere like the US would be considered left-wing. But I think it's, yeah.
Okay, so in terms then, try and be as objectively as possible, because I know this one's going to be hard for you. I know this one's going to be really hard for you. But first,
Mhm.
let's go to Marcus Aurelius, who has a question.
What's Marcus got?
Is there a society or time period which closely resembled your ideal government?
Right now. This is the best. This is the best we've had. The system that we've got, I think it's not perfect, but it's the best that I think we've had through history. I mean, history's full of pretty ordinary governments. There's a lot of authoritarianism, a lot of dictatorships, whether it was ruled by monarchies or whether it was just individual dictators. But I think the system that we've got, I actually think the system of government we've got is pretty good in Australia. It's just the only thing I would change is I would replace the Queen with the President.
That's fair enough.
And I'd also abolish the states, but that's a whole other topic.
That's got to be a yikes from me, Chief.
Anyway, no.
The GOD asks, are there any different election times for local government, i.e. mayors, than the federal government?
Yeah, so every state's got their own rules. So the state that I'm in, New South Wales, the elections are held every 4 years. So once again, it's a lower house, upper house. The upper house gets 2 terms, and it's only ever a half election for the upper house. They get 2 terms. The lower house gets 1 term, and it's a fixed date election. The local governments in New South Wales are every 3 years as well, except we were meant to have an election in September, but that's been pushed back a year because of the nasty cold that everyone's got in the world at the moment. Now, what's your controversial question for me?
What is...
Oh, actually, Dave Worley wants to know, when's voting day? Who do I vote for? When's the next election? Well, I voted for myself at the last election. So there you go. That gives you a bit of a hint.
Oh, he's trying to treat you like a bookie. He's asking what topics will win the next election.
Hey, if I knew that, I'd be getting paid a lot more money than I do right now. No, sorry, I don't get paid any money from the government, just to be clear. But I'm sure I would consult them if I knew the exacts of that.
So, as objectively as you can, what is the Labour government? Well, not the government, but the Labour Party, and what does it stand for?
Yeah, look,
as objectively as you can.
Yeah, no, and look, I'll preface this. I've had family who have worked for the Labor Party. I've got friends who are actually in the Labor Party. I get on very well with members of, like, actual sitting members of the Labor Party, and through like business associations and organisations that I've worked with, I've had very good working relationships with people from the Labor Party. So I've got no problems with the Labor Party. I just have a different view on. I think like myself and the Liberal Party, they want the best for the country. We've just got slightly different ideas on how that's achieved. So the Labor Party's probably more about, it's a bigger government picture. So it's sort of, they don't buy into the trickle-down economics theory. They're sort of more, well, the government should provide more resources. The government should provide more for people. And to do that, they raise the taxes on business. They tend to tax business a bit more. I guess they're probably more, well, they would view themselves, and I would disagree with this, but they would view themselves as more pro-worker and less pro-business.
Fair enough.
So we did have a question from Atheist Donna, who asked, what are my views on government-run healthcare? I'm completely pro-universal healthcare. Yes, we have it here in Australia. I'm not sure. Donna, are you from Australia? I think we've spoken before, but I'm not sure if. Sorry, and I apologise. Because I do end up talking to so many people. So apologies if I've confused you with someone else. But no, look, in Australia, we've got complete universal healthcare. If I need to go to the doctors today, I can go to the doctors, and it will probably be what's called bulk billed, which is where I actually don't need to pay anything. It's all covered under Medicare. You can have private health insurance if you want, which can mean for things like elective surgeries, you can jump the queue, or if you do need to go in for something, the private hospitals, they tend to have, less people, so you might get your own room, or certain things like that. The Medicare levy is 1% of your income over $50,000. So if you earn $100,000, you're probably paying about $500 roughly, I think that would be, in Medicare levy.
And that's really not much. I mean, that's pretty bloody awesome, if you ask me.
Yeah, and look, and where that, and the government does obviously tip in a lot towards that. Like healthcare is a big cost, and there's certain taxes that will go towards healthcare, like cigarettes. Pretty much all the taxes for cigarettes will go towards healthcare because if you're a smoker, you're probably going to need that system at some point. So it's you will find that that sort of that comes into play. But no, look, as a die-in-the-wool conservative, I will tell you right now that universal healthcare is something I'm completely for. Funnily enough, and Donna said she's in the UK. Here's a funny story for you. Universal healthcare and Medicare was originally introduced to the UK by Prime Minister C. Attlee. That's what I tell everyone. So that's how can I be against it when it's almost my name, just slightly different. But so that happened after the Second World War, I believe in 1947. We introduced it here in the 1970s. It works. So whenever I have conversations with conservatives in the US who don't think it's a great thing and want to talk about how it doesn't work, I'll tell you right now, universal healthcare absolutely works. It's 100%. A good thing, and everyone should have it.
Well, I'd be dead if it wasn't for universal healthcare here in Australia. I wouldn't have even made it past 24 hours old.
Well, there you go. Well, I think worldwide kids will get universal healthcare, so that can be slightly different. But I guess as an adult, like if I need to go to the doctors tomorrow, I can go to the doctors and not have to stress about it's going to cost me a fortune. If I have to go to hospital for something, something's happened, I'm not going to be left with crippling bills like they are in the US. Like it's just a joke in the US. The healthcare system in the US is a joke.
In the US,
and Marcus Aurelius he's picked it. Big Clement, that's him. Good old Clement Attlee. but yeah. I prefer to say Prime Minister C. Attlee. I don't know. It's just got a bit of a ring to it. I like it.
Nepotism. Just kidding.
Oh, there's a lot of nepotism here. Don't you worry.
I'm kidding. Don't kill me.
Oh dear. So Pastor Mike said, raised in South Wales, now in the US. Hopefully New South Wales has some decent structure. Yeah, it does. New South Wales is pretty good. It's I'm in the I believe I'm in the best state to live in this country for. Yeah. Oh, I mean, look, we don't have Queensland's beaches, but what we do have is probably the best government in the country as far as state governments go. Grumpy Old Dude has asked, do states have slightly different laws from one another, like here in the US? Yes and no, which is a really shitty answer. So yes, different states do have different laws based on what they can legislate on. But it's not like the US, where the US is essentially 50 different countries. The US is almost like the European Union. Just with, so but no, we're a much more united nation. The federal government has a lot more control and power here. So Grumpy Old Dude wants to know if I'll become a politician in the US. Look, as much as I'd love to, I can't afford the healthcare costs.
Yeah. What was it? $10,000 a night just for a regular hospital bed.
It's insane.
Then it's $400 an hour for ICU when you're practically unconscious.
Yep. You could be rushed to the hospital through no choice of your own, and it could cost you. It could send you bankrupt. It's a dumb system. Absolutely dumb system.
Bullshit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and Jay's not Ed. Okay, take it as a compliment. I mean, Ed's a good guy. See, for two guys who get along very well, they're actually getting rather offended in the chat there that I mixed Jay and Ed up, and that's only because the comment above Jay's, yes, I see it's Jay's, was Ed's, and I was probably reading Ed's at the same time. So, there we go. So
maybe it was the almighty power of the GOD possessing Jesus.
You never know. You never know. So we've got a question. Actually, Marcus Aurelius, you're throwing some good questions in. I'm actually quite enjoying these. So we've got, so would I be in favour of democratising the workplace through reformation of traditional business into worker co-ops? No, absolutely not. No, I think if a business chooses to do that, that's the decision of the business. I think that in business, in my experience, people have different skill sets. There's some people who know how to grow a business. There's some people who don't. And I think everyone should. How would I put this? All right, if a plumber comes around to fix my sink, I'm not going to tell him how to do his job, and I'm not going to stand there and get my wife and everyone in the household and vote on what he should do. I'm just going to trust that he's the best person for the job, and I think the same should apply to management and business. If they're there, they're probably being paid a lot of money, and they're probably being paid a lot of money for a very good reason. That's because they have a high level of expertise in a certain field. No, I definitely wouldn't democratize workplaces. If a business wanted to do that, that's on that business, and if it works for them, great. But I would be very surprised. I don't think it's a good model, and I guess no, it's just pure no. I'm trying to think of a positive to it. I can't think of a positive to that. So unless there's any other questions, Oz, the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, I think I'm going to have to confess, you've gotten me as close to your political ideologies as you possibly could without dismantling my anti-political mindset.
Well, look, the thing is, it's not about me convincing you of my political ideology. I think what's important for everyone to do, and whether people agree with me, disagree with me, I think it's important to actually look at the policies of different parties, especially when elections are coming up. Don't listen to the news. Don't listen to the media. God, don't listen to Twitter. Whatever you do, don't listen to Twitter, because it's people. I see some of the stuff that people politically put on Twitter, and it almost makes me want to cry. It's seriously there. It's people just retweet misinformation, and that happens on both sides. What I would really strongly suggest is look at the policies. Think about what's important to you, what's going to be best for your situation. Who's going to, I guess, do the job for you. And look, that could be one of the major parties. It could be one of the minor parties. That's a good thing about preferential voting. You can vote for a minor party and then still give it to still know that, it's not a wasted vote, that it will still flow on to your second choice or your third choice and so on. Look, I'm pretty passionate about my way of thinking, and I do believe it works. But I would strongly encourage you to jump onto the website for both of the major parties and just look at their policies. It's going to be full of propaganda on both sides, but just look at what they actually say and just see which one you feel fits with you. Just look past the news and the headlines. It's like, say, for instance, if you were to listen to the media and Twitter, you would think that the Liberal Party or the right-wing party is against renewable energy and is anti-climate change and things like that. Do you think that's a fair statement if you were to go by what's on Twitter?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think that's accurate? You don't think that Twitter would say the Liberal Party is against climate change?
Oh, I know Twitter would say it, but I just don't agree with what Twitter has said.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but I guess this is an example of something that's put out there. So last year, the Liberal Party in Australia actually invested $11 billion into renewable technologies. So things like there's, they're not the party of coal so much. They're the party of, okay, well, we need coal for the moment, but we're also investing in renewables. So they actually invested more in renewables than the Labor Party planned to invest. But the narrative you'd hear online and in the media is that the Liberal Party is against climate change. There's climate change denial and things like that. So you've got to really look past that. But the best way to do that is to go to the actual party websites, read their policies, see what they stand for. Have a look at your local member, see what he or she stands for.
Exactly.
That's the best way.
Marcus Aurelius, I will take that question simply because I've run my own business. You want democracy on a national level, why not a business level? Because a business is completely and utterly completely different than a government in almost every conceivable manner. Whereas you have people that are specialized for their specific job. If you democratize it, you could have people that seem charming or vocal enough to seem as if they're right for that specific job. And if you vote for them, they could be completely and utter shit, and you could lose that business.
And the other thing, I guess, there's 2 points I'd make to it. The first is with a business, the business owner is the one taking the risk. So with my business, you know what? If the business collapses, well, I'm the one who loses everything. You know, I'm the one who puts the investment and the capital in. You know, I'm the one who takes the risk. I'm the one who, you know, there's been weeks in my business where, I mean, there's been months in my business where I haven't been paid anything, but the people in my business, the people who work for me, they still get paid, but the business hasn't earned enough to. So I think when you're a business owner and you take those risks, you're entitled to run the business if you're the one taking the risk. But democracy, see, this is the thing. We don't have a democracy on a national level where every decision is voted on by all of us. You know, it's if a bill's passed, you know, it's Parliament, so the management of the government will pass the bill. You know, they don't come to us for every single little thing. In fact, when they do come to us for a plebiscite, we consider it an inconvenience and don't like it. But it's actually a similar structure in that sense. So so what else have you got for me, Oz? I'm sort of looking at the time. We probably won't go too long with this one tonight, but mate, what else are you thinking? What else are you thinking?
Well, I'm trying to figure out exactly how long have we been going for. We've been going
40,
for roughly
42 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
All right, so I want to make it personal now. What do you stand for, as much as you possibly can?
So I believe that business should be supported. I think that we should have lower taxes for business so they can employ more people. I think that strong business growth will stimulate the economy. It means that more people end up paying tax. It puts more money in. Those people then spend money in the economy, which creates more jobs and so on and so on and so on. So I definitely stand for that. I'm a big believer that the government should not interfere in people's lives. But that being said, things like universal health care, policing, you know, that kind of infrastructure obviously is where we need the government, but things like, you know, who can marry who and what happens in people's bedrooms, and you know, if people choose to, you know, drink or smoke, you know, or smoke pot or something like that, that I don't think that that's any of the government's business, unless it's at the point where it hurts someone else. I think that people should be free to choose to do and say what they want to do. But I think where the line gets drawn is where it hurts or affects other people is where the government should step in. So, for instance, if I said, I want to, you know, I like the look of your house, I'm going to walk in and take this because I'm free to do what I want. That's where the government should step in and say, well, no, you aren't allowed to do that. But, you know, if I want to turn around and say, hey, Ausman, I don't like you and I'm going to call you this, this, and this, I have the right to do that, I think. Yeah, you have the right to go, that guy is an asshole. And a lot of people would probably do that. But, you know, I think that freedom of speech is probably something that we don't have so much of in Australia, but we should. So I guess that's a rough overview. I mean, without wanting to go into a full political diatribe of here's what I stand for and here's what I shall do.
No, that's perfectly understandable.
Dave Worley has asked a very important question. Why isn't there a donut-flavoured Ben & Jerry's? That's because Perfection is the cinnamon donut vodka shot that I can get about a kilometre up the road at the world's largest vodka infusion bar. And I think I think they actually do have a jelly donut flavoured one as well. So when you've got it in vodka, you don't need it in ice cream. Marcus Aurelius wants to know, what are my opinions about the complaints of BLM activists in America? And is there a plight of systemic racism? Are they justified to say so? All right, so a couple of things to break down in that. Yes, there is systemic racism in the US, but it's also a poverty based system. Unfortunately, a lot of African Americans are in lower socioeconomic situations, and that's a result of years and years of discrimination and systemic racism. I think that it's turning the corner. I think it's going to improve. It's not something that can improve overnight. I would like to think, though, that in 20 years, 30 years, it would look very different. BLM, all right, so I think there's two BLMs. I think there's the genuine BLM, which is fighting against, I guess what they perceive as police brutality. And I think certainly things like racial profiling is absolutely something that's happening from what I can see as an outsider looking in. But the problem I've got is there's also another element of BLM which isn't really about Black lives. It's about pushing a political ideology, and it's about it is a Marxist or a communist ideology. A classic example is the whole raise a fist in solidarity. That's a Marxist symbol. I mean, that's the communist raising the fist in solidarity. Now, if there's any other any cultural things in the US I'm not aware of, I'll apologize straight up. But globally, that's Marxist symbology. I don't think that it does much for the plight of African Americans or Black lives when you've got a bunch of white Antifa kids burning down neighborhoods and setting car yards alight, and it's never the nice affluent white neighborhoods that are getting burnt down. It's always the same neighborhoods that the downtrodden, the lower socioeconomic, the African Americans are living in that get burnt down, because that's where they're staging the protests, and then that's where they're going to smash it all up. I saw on the news the other day a car dealership being, all the cars being burnt. What does that do? How the hell does that progress anything? All that does is it makes half the country sit there and go, well, you know what? Yes, we support racial equality, but I'm having nothing to do with them. I'm having nothing to do with that organization, and it just further marginalizes people.
Yeah, it does. And also, to speak on Jay's comment about it's also Black Panthers. Yeah, there's a little show there.
The Black Panthers are. No, it's not.
No, the Black Panthers are all about against police brutality. I think I'm not sure what Jay's.
There's a bit more history there. No,
they're very anti-police. They're very, very anti-police. However,
they're anti-establishment, and they actually were, as we know now, they actually were funded by the Soviet Union back in the 60s. So that probably, there's probably some of that symbology that creeped in there. So
yes, they are.
And there's also virtue signaling. That's right. Yeah, I'd agree with that, Dave. It is virtue signaling. And Marcus has said, in other words, I'd make the distinction between the genuine protesters on the ground and the higher ups who influence the movement and organise how funding is taken and used. Yes, I would. Yep. I would absolutely. I believe there are genuine protests. I mean, look, classic example. I mean, there was a woman who was abused in, I'm not sure where it was, but it made the news, where all the BLM protesters, who were all very, very white, let me tell you, in these videos and photos, were going and basically telling people who were just having dinner or at cafes, raise your fist in solidarity with us. Now, this woman said, no, I'm not doing that. So they all surrounded her, screamed at her, and basically abused this woman because she wouldn't raise her fist in solidarity. Turns out she was actually someone who supported BLM and had been marching and protesting with BLM, but she just didn't want to be forced to raise her fist in that manner. And nor should anyone be forced to. I mean, that's fascism at its finest when you're doing that. Look, I do think there is a huge distinction between the the genuine protesters who I think had every right to protest. I don't object to that. I don't think the timing was the best. I think with the virus that's going on, I understand the need to protest, but really it's not the time for it. But I get it. But at the same time, the ones who are inciting riot, causing trouble, and basically pushing Marxist agendas, I take big issue with those. And people can say, oh, it's not communists. In Australia, we had the BLM protests. Now, the BLM protests were protesting the Indigenous deaths in custody, saying that the Indigenous death rate was too high. The Indigenous death rate in custody is actually half of what it is for non-Indigenous people. So they found something to protest for the sake of protesting it. But that was actually organised by the Australian Communist Party in Victoria. The Socialist Alliance organised it in New South Wales. And what happens is socialist groups and communist groups, they will attach themselves to populist movements. So when same-sex marriage was on the cards, they attached themselves to that. And I can assure you the Communist Party has historically not been a friend of the LGBT community. Just ask people in China, or North Korea. There's classic examples of horrendous things that have happened there. Climate change. They attach themselves to every climate change. You always see someone there with the Socialist Alliance. Socialists and communists are some of the biggest polluters in the world. I mean, a part of the Communist Manifesto is to industrialize nations, have factories. So they attach themselves to these movements because they're popular movements. And look, everyone who doesn't want to say, hey, yes, Black Lives Matter and we need to address racism. Of course, everyone does. So people go out and protest, and the next thing you know, they find themselves surrounded by the socialists who are then indoctrinating them in, let's get rid of capitalism. That's got absolutely nothing to do with it. There's racism in all societies, regardless of the politics. I mean, in China, the Uyghur Muslims in China, I mean, they're basically being exterminated. I mean, you have a look in Turkey. I'm having a mental blank. I'm having a mental blank on the Armenians. The Armenian genocide happened under a basically the Turkish dictatorship. Turkey denies it, of course, but the Armenian genocide did happen. So you see racism in all forms of society, and that's basically because we still, as a race, are still getting over this whole tribal thing that is ingrained in our genetics. So that's why people, similar thing to a sporting team. If you see two people having a fight and one's wearing the jersey of the sporting team that you like, the other one's wearing the jersey of the sporting team you don't like, well, you're automatically going to think the guy wearing or the girl wearing the sporting jersey of your team is in the right. It's it's just genetics. It is what it is.
It's also called guilt by association.
It is. Yep, it is.
I don't believe in, what is it?
Incidentally, Gary's put in there, good thing capitalists are not polluters. Capitalists are polluters.
Yes.
Capitalists,
yes.
Absolutely. It's everyone in the world, every system of government pollutes. I mean, but it's to say that socialism or communism is this virtuous one that doesn't is completely wrong, because more than anything, communism especially, I mean, you read Das Kapital, which is Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. If you read that, it's all about industrializing. And of course, it was written in the 19th century, but it's all about industrializing in factories. I mean, look at China. I mean, they can pop up a city in about 2 weeks. They're a highly industrialized nation. They're the largest polluter in the world. So it's it's the one thing that America isn't the best on. America, I think, is number 2, and then I think you've got India at number 3. But it's all forms of government will do this stuff. No one form of government has it all. Is all virtuous and all wonderful and all good. It's even like democracy. I think Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government, apart from all the other forms of government that have come before it. And he was probably right. It's the best we've ever had, and it's the best we've got now. Is it perfect? No, it's not.
No.
Is there a better system? Well, if there is, we haven't found it yet.
Yeah, and I'd just like to personally say that I intensely disbelieve in industrialization.
Look, you need some, because you've still got to be able to produce goods, but not over the top industrialization. I think we do live in a bit of a, we live in a very much in a society that likes nice things. So manufacturing, there is a high demand for it, but I think there's also better technologies coming out that are going to make it a lot easier, meaning that there'll be less pollution, it'll be more automated. I think the world will be very different. I mean, look at the last 20 years. Hell, the changes that have occurred in the last 20 years. I remember 20 years ago, people going, I wouldn't be comfortable putting my credit card over the internet and shopping. No, who's going to shop online? And now if you don't have an online shop, your business will fail. Most people will do more of their shopping online than they will in shops. The shopping centers are dying. So, that's just one example. The way we communicate. I mean, I'm sitting here. So I'm sitting here in Australia, and there's people who are in the chat watching this live who are in America, who are in the UK. And I'm just doing this from the comfort of my house, and then I'm talking to you, and we're here live, essentially producing we are producing a show. And you're in a different part of Australia to me. It's, the technology that we've got here to do this is amazing. And that's all happened in the last 20 years. So I think in the next 20 years, the next 30 years, I'm excited to see what comes. I just hope that we don't completely screw ourselves getting there.
Well, yeah, and that's where it leads me into my correction. I didn't mean industrialization as in little things. I meant like turning entire cities into nothing but industrial complexes. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. Gary said maybe even renewables would be socially acceptable one day. I think renewables are very socially acceptable. That's why the Australian Liberal government invested $11 billion in renewables last year, which is actually the highest investment in renewable energy by any Australian government ever. So, we've got things like Snowy Hydro too. I don't want to turn this into an ad for the Liberal Party here, but that's not, look, yes, I'm a Conservative. The Liberal Party is not perfect. I'll tell you right now, the Liberal Party isn't perfect. But I think it's the best that we've got. So, and that's why I'm associated with it. And look, I know Gary and I've had some interesting conversations with Gary, and Gary is completely a polar opposite to me when it comes to politics. But we still have a respectful conversation. I actually quite like him. I think he likes me because he keeps showing up. He either likes me or he really likes to troll me. I'm not too sure. Well, we'll go with I think we get along. But we hold. I can assure you that if we went to the ballot box, it's with our preferential voting numbers, we're probably going to have the opposite. My number one's probably going to be the one he puts last, and vice versa, and that's fine, because the thing is, you actually need different thoughts and different ideas. And I was actually saying this on the stream I do with Steve McRae earlier. If you wouldn't want an all left wing or an all right wing government. You need that balance, because you need those good ideas that come. I mean, universal healthcare is a great example of that. Now, that's something that's a left wing principle. Now, it's something that was introduced by a left wing government, put into practice, and it works. So, guess what? We keep it. So, I mean, there's an example of something that's a left wing ideology that I'm happy to say, hey, you know what? That's wonderful. I'm completely for that. It has worked, and it's proven to work. So there's a lot of things like that. So, okay. So I've been asked my opinions on nuclear energy. I wish we could get. It frustrates me that there's this big nuclear boogeyman out there, because nuclear energy and nuclear power would basically negate the need for coal plants, especially in Australia. And I mean, look, we can put a nuclear power plant out in the middle of the desert. So if there's a meltdown, I think there's, out of all of the thousands and thousands of nuclear power plants, I think there's been 3 in history, and it's all sort of freak accidents that have caused it. One was a tsunami. So, we can put a nuclear power plant in the middle of the desert, and it's going to negate a lot of the impact if something were to go wrong. I think we should look at that. That being said, I'm not a scientist, but I know that when I was having a conversation with Mama Atheist, Manda, who is a climate scientist and is an expert in that field, she absolutely said that yes, nuclear is something that is a good option, and I'd probably tend to go with that.
No, I agree. I just wish there was a way that we could fully use the emissions and the results from nuclear energy as a renewable source.
And Gary's put something interesting there: free healthcare, free education. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Free education to a certain. I don't think universities should be funded. I think the system we've got at the moment is pretty good. Like free schooling, it completely makes sense. If you want to send your kids to a private school, a religious school, well, you can do that. But every child gets an equal opportunity, and I think that's great. Master Zenith said we have Lucas Heights. Lucas Heights actually isn't a nuclear power plant. That's actually a nuclear research facility. So that's never gone off. And I can tell you, I used to live in a suburb called Engadine, which looked over the valley at the Lucas Heights nuclear reactor. And I know I've still got all my hair, so I think we're going all right.
Well, then let's go back to the previous comment that you made earlier on the stream, and let's try and make this one of the last ones, because this is going to be a big one. This is one of the yikes one. You said the elimination of states. Hang
on a second. I do need to address something because I know exactly what Gary's getting at here. They have a Macca's there, I believe.
Oh, dear
I was there on the night in question. I remember the night. And no, it did not happen. I can tell you right now, if that happened, myself and all my friends who were all 16-year-olds sneakily drinking at Macca's and hanging out there, because that's what we did on the night of the grand final, and we all hated the Sharks. Well, half of us hated the Sharks, half of us didn't. No, it did not happen. I can guarantee it didn't happen, because there is absolutely one reason we'd know about it, but the other thing is, why would anyone from I believe he lived at Caringbah, why would someone from Caringbah go to Engadine? It's just to go to Macca's when there's a Macca's at Caringbah. At the time, there was one at Kirrawee at the time. There was one at Sylvania at the time. The Sylvania one was a 24-hour one. Engadine, you couldn't get a taxi to or from Engadine. Someone would have had to have driven. No, it didn't happen. It was a joke rumor. Never happened. So yes. So anyway,
should I ask?
Actually, Master Zenith has said, okay, Master Zenith, you're from Miranda. Okay, so I'll ask you the question: would you go to Engadine Macca's when there's like a lot more Macca's close? There'd be no reason to go to Engadine Macca's. And the other thing with Engadine Macca's is you get into Engadine, and then you've got to go through, if you're coming from that direction, and kind of loop around and then come back. So it's not like Heathcote Macca's is different. Engadine Macca's is no. So it's so Master Zenith, you can. That's wrong. Okay, how so? I literally I grew up in Engadine. I was there 2 days ago. Definitely, if you're coming from. In fact, I proposed to my wife at Heathcote Macca's, so I know the Macca's of that area very, very well. So yeah. Anyway. It's all good. Pizza Hut. Yeah, Pizza Hut's not there anymore. Used to be on the corner. KFC's there now. But anyway, we don't need to get into the fast food geography of Engadine in New South Wales. So,
do I need to ask exactly what he's shit stirring you about?
There's a rumor going around that on the night of the 1997 grand final, the Super League grand final, Scott Morrison shit himself at Engadine Macca's.
I heard about that, and he didn't even deny it. He's just like, "Oh, so what?"
He didn't acknowledge it. I think he just rolled his eyes and said, "Seriously, I'm not responding to that." But yeah, so it was Yeah, it never happened. You were there on open day. I was probably there on the open day as well. I spent a lot of time at Engadine KFC when it opened. Unfortunately, I used to work around the corner. I actually used to have a unit just around the corner from that as well. Anyway, enough about the fast food of the Dean, as we call it. So sorry, you had a very important question that you wanted to bring up that we kept getting sidetracked on.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I love the fact that the community is interacting with us. I love that fact. What is this comment about completely eliminating the states? That's a yikes.
Okay. When Federation happened, essentially it was the 6 colonies coming together and joining. Now, the problem we've got with that at the moment is, okay, we've got border closures at the moment, which is insane. I mean, what's happening in Victoria at the moment is disgusting. The advice that the federal government has given is that that areas that have infections should be locked down. I mean, we've got situations where you've got people who have a farm where half of it's in Victoria, half of it's in South Australia, who, because the houses in Victoria technically can't go anywhere or do anything. The kids can't go to school because, of an imaginary line. In Victoria, yeah, they've got a lot of cases of the nasty disease that's going around, but it's all centered in Melbourne. You've got, I believe there's 26 or 27 regions or council areas that have 0 cases. So, the economy's on border towns. Like we've got a lot of border towns where it's been affected. I mean, Queensland, New South Wales is a great example. There's a road where one side of the road's in New South Wales, the other side of the road's in Queensland. So you had people who couldn't cross the road legally. You had people who, they lived in New South Wales, but their business was in Queensland and vice versa, that couldn't access their business. I mean, Coolangatta Airport, so the Gold Coast Airport, half of it's in New South Wales. I bet you didn't know that. Half of it's actually in New South Wales. What I think that so that's one of the problems. The other problem is there's states that have too much power and that tend to get their funny politicians elected. So I'll give you an example. Jackie Lambie. Jackie Lambie is a senator in Tasmania. She's an independent senator. I've met Jackie on many occasions, but I think Jackie got less votes than I did. Yet she's an elected senator, and I lost in a regular seat. And I'll fact check myself on that because I could be completely wrong on that. But it's a population of 350,000 has the same amounts of senators as a population of 7.5 million. In fact, there's more people in, like, Brisbane Council has a bigger area to look after, or a bigger population to look after, than the entire state of Tasmania. And I just think that's wrong. It's, a similar thing with South Australia. You've got different, it doesn't work. I think it's a system that was set up in the 19th century because we were all these colonies, because, distance was a big issue back then. It's not an issue anymore. I think we've got a federal government. I think we should all just be under that federal government and have equal representation.
Yeah. Also,
and Gary just said all states should be working to the same advice. Absolutely, they should. They should all be working to the same advice. But the problem is they're not. And the reason you've got these issues in Victoria is because the Victorian Premier decided to play politics and didn't want to do what the Prime Minister said because he's on a different team to the Prime Minister. Didn't take the help because he didn't want any help from the other team, and as a result, we've had these outbreaks.
I'm taking
Master
that one.
Zenith. Hang on, Master Zenith did say something else. Tarrant Point Hotel, great meeting place in the 70s and 80s. That's where there in the Crest at Sylvania is where 16 and 17-year-old Chris used to go with his fake ID.
Oh, well, we've all done something stupid in our young lives. That's all good. Now,
I don't know how stupid it was. I was a 17-year-old sneaking into pubs. I mean, come on, who didn't? Seriously.
I mean, that is pretty legendary if you can get in like that. I mean,
Yeah.
come
Oh,
on.
yeah. I had the greatest scam going. I went to I say scam. I was just very smart. I went to one of the RSLs, and if in Australia, if you go into a club, you've actually got to sign in if you're not a member. So I actually went into one of the clubs and just said, I'm not a member, but I live in the area. Can I join? How much does it cost to be a member? And the guy behind the thing goes, oh, it's $5. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, filled out the form, added a couple of, I might have fluffed a bit on the on when my birthday was. Had a membership card, so then when I went out, I just go, oh, I don't have my ID. Look, I'm a member of here, and I mean, here's all my other stuff that confirms my name. Yeah, you're right, mate. Go in. So you could get away with that in the 90s. I don't think you can get away with that now. But yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can.
So sorry, I'm going to let you take the political question here, Oz. Go for it.
Oh no, it's not political. This one's purely medical, and I'm sorry for taking over your show. Master Zenith still can't see.
You're my producer, mate. This is our show.
Oh, fair enough. Master Zenith still can't see why people who do not have COVID can't move around if needed. The answer to that is water droplets, and the fact that the COVID virus is smaller and piggybacks on the water droplets. And if you've seen the Mythbusters show where they do a fake sneeze and they set up a fake dinner table scene, you will see that it is incredibly easy for people to get any sort of bugs on you. Doesn't matter how meticulous you are with self-care, you will get hit with the bugs, even if you are asymptomatic.
I think they're what Zenith is saying. People who don't have it, so in those areas where there's no cases, like Melbourne's a hotspot.
Transmission,
but Wodonga isn't.
Yeah,
Mildura, which is miles away, it's closer to Adelaide, I think, than Melbourne. So I think that's sort of the point. I think that so the government, the federal government's advice is, don't lock down states, don't lock down borders, allow people to continue to go about their lives as per normal. But where you've got an outbreak in an area, you lock down that area. So Melbourne at the moment, Melbourne has an outbreak. Victoria doesn't have an outbreak. Melbourne has an outbreak. So you know what? You lock down Melbourne. That's it. Lock down Melbourne. Let everyone else, like, a small country town where, with 100 people, doesn't need to be locked down. Melbourne does. Parts of Sydney, that's what they did in New South Wales. They followed that advice. Parts of Sydney, wasn't even really a lockdown, but they quarantined it well. And it's worked here. I mean, our cases completely dropped to virtually nothing. I think we had 2 cases yesterday, and they were both from known sources. So anyway.
Well, I fully agree with that it should just be selective isolation. But I still think that the particles from the virus can catch onto dust particles.
Yeah, of course.
And can travel.
Of course they can. Yeah, of course. Well, they can to an extent. I think there's a lot that we still don't know. But I mean, it's me going to the shopping centre. Now, I'll throw a mask on when I go to the shops anyway, because I just think it's the responsible thing to do at the moment.
Yeah.
But you know what? I live in an area where there's no cases. We haven't had any cases for a while. So realistically, I shouldn't be locked down, and I'm not locked down. But if the border was moved and I happen to be in Victoria, even though there's been nothing in my area and everyone's doing the right thing, we all wear masks, we all socially distance, there would be no need for us to be locked down here, but that's what they're doing in parts of Victoria, and it's wrong. It is. It's completely. And look, there's elections coming up, and all the politicians want to beat their chest and say, "Look what I did! I did what I had to do, and you mightn't have liked it, but I did what I had to." And it's the only good thing I see out of it is, and this isn't a political party thing. I can't wait till there's a Victorian election and they get rid of that clown that's running Victoria. He needs to go. He is a goose. He was a goose before, and he's a goose now. I was trying to be nice and say, hey, look, everyone's going through a tough job. You know what? He bought a lot of this, or the decisions of his government, wanting to play politics, bought a lot of the problems that they've got on now. The reaction to it isn't in the best interests of everyone, because they won't follow the federal government's advice. What they want to do, what they want to do, because it has to be against the other side. So
I don't get that. It has to be against the other side. I don't. When it comes to a pandemic like this, you put that shit aside.
That's what should happen. And look, Anthony Albanese, the federal Labor leader, so he's the leader of the opposition. I take my hat off to him. At the start of all this, he said, "Look, we don't agree with this policy, this policy, this policy, but we see that we need to get something through. We're going to propose some changes, regardless of whether those changes are accepted or not by the government. We will be voting in favour of whatever's put forward." And he said that just so the minor parties didn't try and play politics with it. It was just so we need to get things passed. We just need to get things through Parliament because we need economic rescue packages for people, whether they're perfect or not. I take my hat off to him because that is actual leadership. And he's the other team, but that is actual leadership. And that's what these premiers should be doing. They should be going, you know what, we just need to do we need to follow the advice. We're all in this together. We're all Australian. We're just going to follow the advice. And you know what? If it works, we'll take credit for it. If it doesn't work, God, you blame the federal government. I mean, it's basic politics, but no, they want to sit there and go, no, we're going to do it this way. We're not listening to that advice. We're going to do it this way. And it's just dumb. It's like, play politics later.
Yeah, that's just childish. You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. Gary, take the compliment. I'm complimenting Albo. It doesn't happen very often that I compliment a Labor leader. just go with it. You cut the clip out and post it. Liberal member praises Albo, says he's a good leader. Oh dear, I'm joking there, Gary. It's all good. It's all good. I like that we can do that. Well, we're over an hour. We're an hour 15. So is there any other pressing questions you've got? Anyone in the chat who's got a question, if you want to throw it, now's the time to throw the question, because I'm probably going to end the stream soon, but I will answer any questions that do come through. Ozzy, have you got anything that any other thoughts or any questions you've got?
No, not really. I think I'm pretty much solid. Pretty solid.
Yep.
Does anyone in the chat have any questions?
I don't know. We're not getting a lot through. It's all quiet. I mean, I
don't know. It's good. 16 seconds.
Yeah, there was some good banter going on before about it's the fast food of the Sutherland Shire, which is always good. Here we go. Excellent. What do I think about the complaints of Marxists about worker exploitation? Yeah, it probably applied in the 19th century. It certainly doesn't apply in modern day Australia.
No.
It's we're in Australia. We've got the highest minimum wage in the world. We're years of unions. It's probably harder on business. I'll be honest. I think in some cases the workers have it too good in certain situations, and I guess I'll give an example of that. For me to employ someone in my cafe on a Sunday when I had the cafe, it would cost $50 per hour to employ someone because we had to pay them double overtime, and that was just a regular cafe worker, and you couldn't have someone on their own, so you always had to have two people there. So we're looking at $100 an hour. The cafe's open for 6 hours. It's costing $600. It wasn't making that much money. So guess what? I didn't open the cafe on a Sunday. Would have liked to have. If it was regular wages, then I would have been opening. Absolutely. I might have even gone and worked myself no, it's... Yeah. Master Zenith wants to ask a religious question. Hell yeah. Absolutely. Bring it. You got a religious question? Yeah, absolutely. Ask me a religious question. Should watch some Vosh. I actually don't know what Vosh is.
Trust me. Yeah, it's a fucking dumpster fire. It's fucking awesome.
What is it? I've heard the name, but I just can't place it.
He destroys Nazis, he destroys reactionaries, he destroys bigoted people, everything like that. He just annihilates them with their own logic. Like,
cool.
He doesn't have his own logic. He uses their logic against him, like you used Darth's logic against him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll probably get on very well with it. It's just look. I Nazis. I hate Nazis. Absolutely hate Nazis. I also hate that people who aren't Nazis and who aren't fascists get called Nazis and fascists. Because as someone who studies history, I can tell you exactly what the Nazis were like, and in modern Western society, we don't have them to that extent. I mean, there's extremists and far right extremist groups. I think the closest thing there is to fascism now in the world is probably North Korea and China. I think that I think communism, the extreme communism and extreme authoritarian communism, authoritarian fascism, or fascism's authoritarian. But I think that that they're basically almost one and the same thing. I prescribe to what's called the horseshoe theory. So yeah.
I need to be absolutely honest. If you go to watch
Yep.
a bot, be careful because he is quite extreme to some degrees. I can't say exactly how because it's been about 3 months since I last watched him.
I'll be honest. I'm fairly limited with the time I have to watch. You know, I like to watch as much of I guess my friends' stuff and other things that I can. But yeah, I'm running businesses, studying full time, working on papers. I don't have time to sleep, and I do this, and this is my chill out. This keeps me sane. So, the question is: if Adam came from the dirt, did he miss out on childhood? Well, technically, it would depend what you define by childhood, but the belief in religious circles is he was created as an adult. So yes, I guess he missed out on those formative years. Obviously, none of it's true, but yeah. So essentially, when Adam and Eve, or when they ate the apple, I mean, we're dealing with toddlers. We're dealing with toddlers. So yeah, Gary, he blames me for his sleep loss. Good. I'm going to make sure I do more shows just to really, really, really mess with your sleep loss, because I know you love it. And don't forget Friday night six pack tomorrow night. It'll be good fun. Cool. So, all right. So I might wrap it up there. Yeah, I think this has been a good chat, an interesting chat. Look, I'm planning on doing this probably every week, maybe every fortnight. I don't know. I enjoy the political side of these conversations. It's just I like it. History, politics, religion. They're the three things I like talking about, and I love that I've got this platform to do it. And I love that people come and listen to what I have to say. It's actually it's quite humbling, actually. So thank you everyone who does join in. Tomorrow we've got Friday night six pack. That's going to be a fun one. We're talking about aliens in the Bible. So
oh dear God.
oh yeah. So there'll be Ezekiel's wheels going to get mentioned. Book of Enoch. We're bringing out all the. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens tropes. But we're going to. The plan will be to examine that probably for about 10-15 minutes, and then it'll probably end up with us getting drunk and poking fun at Jen and bringing up pictures of Sean Connery like we did 2 weeks ago. Anything can happen. Anything can happen on Friday night six pack, but it is a hell of a lot of fun. So come over 9:30 tomorrow night for those in Australia, 7:30 Eastern for those in the US. That'll be on tomorrow. And then Atheist Pastor podcast, it's either going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I'm still lining up the guest. I've got a couple of people I've been talking to. I'm just trying to make times match and work out, but it'll be fun. It'll be good. So Gary's quickly put Federal Independent Commission Against Corruption. Yeah, cool. Bring it on. Corruption needs to be eliminated. And then he's gone six pack. Yes, and I'm with you. Six pack is fun. If you haven't checked out Friday Night Six Pack, come and have a look. Come and have a look. It costs you nothing. If you haven't subscribed to the channel too, hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing to subscribe. It's good fun. Hit the like button, or if you're Darth Dawkins, hit the dislike button. I don't think we've had any dislikes yet, so that's Darth. I worry about Darth. Darth doesn't love me anymore, but that's okay. It's my life is much better off without Darth. Although Ed did get accused of being Darth Dawkins yesterday, which I thought was pretty funny. It'd be good. Hey Zenith, yeah, let's get in touch. Have a chat. We'll always looking to have different people on the show. We can talk about. We'll have a chat about the Shire back in the day and all the good places that you could go out in. Get T Jump on the show. Yeah, I could do that. I've never really spoken to T Jump or reached out to T Jump. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it if T Jump wanted to come on the show. I guess we can talk anyway. But yeah, probably Probably not at the top of my list, but if he gets in touch, we'll have a chat. I'm open to it. All right. Anyway, that being said, everyone have a good night, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are on this beautiful planet that we all occupy. Thank you for joining us tonight.